The barn door hung crooked on its hinges, swaying in the desert wind like a broken promise. Tom McCready had built that door with his own hands 15 years ago, back when his wife still sang while she worked and his daughter still called him Papa. Now the wood was splitting, the iron rusted, and something inside was screaming, "Don't touch it!" The voice was raw, desperate, coming from the shadows where the hay bales cast their long fingers across the dirt floor. "Please, mister, don't touch it!" Tom's hand froze on the leather satchel, half buried beneath the loose straw. The bag was warm, too warm for something that should have been sitting in the cold barn all night. Through the worn leather, he could feel shapes pressing against his palm, hard and angular, like broken glass wrapped in silk. "Who's there?" His voice carried the authority of a man who'd spent decades breaking horses and worse things. "Show yourself." A girl emerged from behind the feed barrels, maybe 16, maybe younger. Her dress was torn at the shoulder, and dried blood painted dark maps across her knuckles. But it was her eyes that made Tom's chest tighten, wild and haunted, like a Mustang that had seen too many wolves. "You gotta leave it alone," she whispered, pressing her back against the barn wall. "It ain't meant for folks like us." Tom studied her face in the dim light filtering through the gaps in the roof. Pretty girl, probably Mexican by the look of her, but speaking English clean as Sunday morning, running from something, that much was clear. The question was whether she was running toward trouble or away from it. "This is my barn, girl, my property." He kept his hand on the satchel, feeling that unnatural warmth seep through his palm. "You want to tell me what you're doing here, or do I need to ride for the sheriff?" She flinched at the word sheriff like he'd struck her. "They led my brother for what's in that bag. Shot him down like a dog in the street," her voice cracked. "You open it, mister. You're gonna wish they'd shot you too." The satchel seemed to pulse beneath his fingers, and Tom felt his world tilt sideways. He'd seen plenty of violence in his 53 years, had dealt his share when necessity demanded it, but the terror in this girl's eyes spoke of something beyond bullets and blood. Something that didn't belong in the rational world of cattle and crops and morning coffee. Tom's fingers stayed locked on the satchel as he studied the girl's face. Every instinct built over decades of frontier life told him to open the bag, to know what he was dealing with. But the raw panic in her voice gave him pause. "What's your name, girl?" "Maria Santos." She wrapped her arms around herself like she was trying to hold her pieces together. "My brother Carlos, he worked for Senor Valdez down in Perdition Canyon. They sent him to deliver this to someone up north, but..." She swallowed hard. "The men who killed him, they're still looking for it." "What men?" "Deputies. Least they wore badges." Her laugh was bitter as alkali water. "But they weren't serving no law I ever heard of." Tom felt the weight of the satchel in his hands, heavier than leather, and metal should be. The smart thing would be to turn this girl over to Sheriff Morrison, let the law sort it out. But Morrison had been asking too many questions lately about Tom's affairs, and there was something in Maria's story that rang true as a church bell. "These deputies," he said carefully, "they got names?" The tall one called himself Fletcher, had scars on his hands like rope burns. She shuddered. The other one, he didn't talk much, but his eyes, Lord have mercy, his eyes were like looking into a grave. Tom knew Fletcher, knew him well enough to understand why a girl would rather trust a stranger than the law. Fletcher wore a badge, sure enough, but he served interests that had nothing to do with justice. "Maria," Tom made his voice gentle as he could manage, "I need to know what's in here." "No!" She lurched forward, then stopped herself. "You don't understand. It ain't natural. It ain't from here." The barn filled with the sound of approaching hoofbeats, still distant but unmistakable. 2 riders, maybe 3, coming hard across the desert. Maria went pale as bleached bone. "They found me," she whispered. Tom made his choice in the space between heartbeats. He grabbed Maria's wrist and pulled her toward the back of the barn, where the old root cellar door lay hidden beneath a pile of horse blankets. "Get down there and don't make a sound," he said. "Whatever happens, don't come up until I tell you." As Maria disappeared into the darkness below, Tom clutched the satchel tighter. The leather was burning hot now, and he could swear he felt something moving inside, pressing against the walls like a caged animal. The hoofbeats grew louder. The riders came with dust clouds trailing behind them like the smoke of damnation. Tom watched through the barn's side window as 3 men reined their horses to a halt in his yard. Fletcher he recognized immediately, tall and lean as a fence post, with those rope-scarred hands Maria had mentioned. The other 2 were strangers, but they had the hard look of men who solve problems with bullets. Tom tucked the satchel inside his coat and stepped out to meet them, keeping his movements casual despite the ice crawling up his spine. The morning sun was bright, but shadows seemed to cling to the riders like they carried their own darkness. "Morning, Fletcher," Tom called out, his hand resting easy on his gun belt. "Little Earl, aye for social calls, ain't it?" Fletcher's smile was thin as a razor cut. "Tom McCready, heard you might have had some unwelcome visitors last night. News travels fast in these parts. Faster when there's blood money involved." Fletcher dismounted with the fluid grace of a natural killer. "We're looking for a Mexican girl. Stole something that don't belong to her." Tom felt the satchel burning against his ribs like a brand. "Haven't seen any girls, Mexican or otherwise. Just me and my cattle out here." One of Fletcher's companions, a thick-set man with dead eyes, spat tobacco juice into the dust. "Maybe we should have a look around. Make sure you ain't overlooking anything." "I'd prefer you didn't." Tom's voice carried the quiet authority of a man who'd never backed down from a fight. "This is private property." Fletcher laughed, a sound like grinding glass. "Property rights are mighty fluid things, Tom, especially when they get in the way of federal business." "Federal?" Tom raised an eyebrow. "Thought you boys worked for the county." "We work for whoever pays best." Fletcher's hand drifted toward his gun. "And right now, that happens to be some very important people who want their property back." The satchel seemed to pulse against Tom's chest, and for a moment the world tilted sideways. The shadows around Fletcher's men appeared to move independently, writhing like living things. Tom blinked hard, and the illusion passed, but the wrongness lingered. "What kind of property are we talking about?" Tom asked, though he dreaded the answer. Fletcher's scarred fingers drummed against his gun butt. "The kind that changes everything, Tom. The kind that makes a man rich beyond his wildest dreams. Or drives him stark, raving mad." The wind picked up, whistling through the barn behind Tom with a sound like distant screaming. He could feel Maria hiding below, probably listening to every word, probably knowing exactly what Fletcher meant. "Sounds like quite a treasure," Tom said. "Oh, it is." Fletcher's smile widened, showing teeth like yellowed ivory. "Question is, are you going to help us find it, or are we going to have to tear this place apart board by board?" Tom's hand tightened on his gun grip as he felt the satchel burn hotter against his chest. The standoff stretched like a bowstring ready to snap. Tom could see the calculation in Fletcher's eyes, weighing the cost of violence against the value of whatever lay hidden in the satchel. Behind him, the barn creaked in the wind, and Tom prayed Maria would stay hidden, no matter what happened next. "Tell you what, Fletcher," Tom said, buying time while his mind raced. "Why don't you boys water your horses while I check the property? If this girl's here, I'll find her." Fletcher's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "You take us for fools, McCready." Before Tom could answer, a child's cry echoed across the yard. All four men turned toward the sound, and Tom's heart nearly stopped. A small boy, maybe 8 years old, stood at the edge of the property clutching a wooden horse. Tom recognized him, Jimmy Santos, one of the Mexican kids from the settlement down the valley. "Senor McCready," the boy called out, tears streaming down his dust-covered cheeks. "Have you seen my sister Maria? She didn't come home last night, and Mama's crying something fierce." Fletcher's eyes lit up like a wolf spotting wounded prey. "Well now, ain't that convenient." Tom stepped between Fletcher and the boy, his mind working frantically. "Jimmy, you need to get on home to your mama. But Maria, I'll help you look for her later," Tom said firmly. "Right now, you need to go." Fletcher pushed past Tom with casual violence. "Hold on there, boy. You said your sister's missing?" Jimmy nodded, wiping his nose with his sleeve. "She went to work yesterday morning and never came back. Mama says maybe something bad happened." "Samit." "Hing bad did happen," Fletcher said, crouching down to the boy's level. "Your sister took something that don't belong to her. You help us find her, we might go easy on the whole family." The threat was clear as mountain air. Tom felt the satchel burning against his ribs and made a choice that would haunt him forever. He pulled the leather bag from inside his coat and held it up where Fletcher could see it. "This what you're looking for?" Fletcher's eyes went wide, and his companions straightened in their saddles like hunting dogs catching a scent. "Where did you—" Fletcher started. "Found it this morning, caught in the fence wire." Tom kept his voice steady despite the fire eating through his chest where the satchel had rested. "Figured someone might come looking for it." Jimmy stared at the bag with the same expression of terror Tom had seen in Maria's eyes. The boy knew exactly what it was, and that knowledge aged his face beyond his years. "You're a wise man, Macready," Fletcher said, reaching for the satchel. Tom pulled it back. "First, the boy goes home safe. Then we talk terms." Fletcher's hand froze halfway to the bag, and something passed between the men, an understanding built on mutual threats and the promise of violence. "Terms!" Fletcher's voice carried the edge of a blade being sharpened. "You ain't in no position to make terms." Tom felt the satchel's heat spreading up his arm like poison, but he held it steady. "Boy walks away clean, and I hand this over. Otherwise, I drop it right here, and we see what happens." For a heartbeat that lasted forever, the world balanced on a knife's edge. Fletcher's companions had their hands on their guns. Jimmy Santos stood frozen with terror, and somewhere beneath the barn floor, Maria held her breath in the darkness. Then Fletcher laughed, a sound like winter wind through dead trees. "You don't even know what you're hold. Do you?" He gestured to his men, who relaxed slightly but kept their weapons ready. "That bag contains things that would make your hair go white just to look at them. Artifacts from places that ain't supposed to exist." Tom felt something shift inside the satchel, like living stone grinding against itself. "What kind of artifacts?" "The kind that fell from the sky down in Perdition Canyon 6 months ago," Fletcher said. "The kind that whisper secrets in languages older than Adam. The kind that show you things about yourself you'd rather not know." Jimmy Santos took a step backward. His wooden horse clutched against his chest like a shield. "Senor Macready, please don't open it. Please." But Tom was already working the leather ties with fingers that felt like they belonged to someone else. The heat from the bag was unbearable now, and strange shadows danced at the corners of his vision. He had to know, had to see what was worth killing for. The satchel fell open. Inside lay 3 objects that hurt to look at directly. A chunk of metal that seemed to bend light around itself, a crystal that pulsed with its own heartbeat, and a small carved figure that appeared to be watching him with eyes like black stars. Tom's mind recoiled from what he was seeing, but his hands wouldn't stop moving. He reached for the carved figure, and the moment his fingers touched it, the world exploded into visions. He saw Maria's brother Carlos dying in an alley, clutching the satchel as Fletcher stood over him. He saw the thing that had fallen from the sky, burning a crater in the desert floor. He saw men touched by the artifacts going mad, turning on friends and family as alien whispers filled their heads. And he saw what Fletcher and his employers really wanted. Not just the artifacts, but the power to use them, to reshape reality itself, according to their twisted desires. "Now you understand," Fletcher said softly. "Hand it over, Macready." Instead, Tom slammed the satchel shut and threw it as hard as he could toward the old well behind the barn. Fletcher screamed and dove after it, his companions following. In the chaos, Tom grabbed Jimmy Santos and pushed him toward the desert. "Run, boy, run, and don't look back." As the child disappeared into the scrub brush, Tom felt Maria emerge from the root cellar behind him. Together, they watched Fletcher and his men scramble around the well, searching desperately for the satchel in the black water below. "It's over," Maria whispered. "For now," Tom agreed. Fletcher stood slowly, water dripping from his clothes, his face twisted with rage. "This ain't finished, Macready. Not by a long shot." But as he spoke, something changed in his eyes, a flicker of uncertainty, as if he was seeing things that weren't there. The artifact's influence, Tom realized. Even brief contact had left its mark. The 3 men mounted their horses and rode away, but Tom could see them arguing among themselves, their movements erratic and paranoid. The desert had claimed them as surely as it had claimed the satchel. Years later, when Maria had married a good man from the settlement, and Jimmy Santos had grown tall and strong, they would sometimes speak of that morning, how the artifacts had vanished into the deep well, taking their madness with them into the earth. How Fletcher and his men had been found weeks later, dead in the desert, their faces locked in expressions of absolute terror. But Tom never spoke of the dreams that came afterward, visions of star-scattered darkness and whispers from the deep places of the world. Some secrets, he learned, were meant to stay buried. The barn door still hung crooked on its hinges, swaying in the wind like a broken promise, but the shadows inside were just shadows now, and the only voices that echoed in the darkness were his own. Stories like this aren't just told, they're felt. If you felt it too, subscribe and stay with us.